Hello, beautiful. They laughed because they couldn't read your silence. They mistook your absence for weakness, your patience for fear, and your privacy for failure. While they chased attention, you built something invisible: discipline, resilience, and a presence that never begged to be seen. Now the strange part begins. The same eyes that ignored you can't stop watching. The same voices that dismissed you suddenly whisper your name. You didn't change to impress the world. You changed so completely that the world had no choice but to notice. The spotlight you never chased has finally found you, and this is only the beginning. Most people believe that if they are not constantly visible, they are falling behind. They think every achievement must be announced, every goal must be shared, and every small victory must be displayed for approval. They confuse attention with progress because the world has trained them to believe that if nobody sees their journey, then the journey has no value. But reality has never worked that way. The strongest foundations are always built where no audience exists. The tallest trees spend years growing roots before they ever rise above the ground. The greatest transformations happen in places where applause cannot reach. While others were busy proving themselves, you were busy improving yourself. There is a difference that many people never understand. One person spends energy creating an image, while another spends energy creating a reality. Images fade the moment people lose interest. Reality continues growing whether anyone is watching or not. Every hour you invested in learning, every sacrifice you made in silence, every lonely morning and every difficult night became a deposit into a future that could not be seen yet. Nothing about that process looked exciting from the outside, but everything about it was changing you from within. Privacy gave you something that attention never could. It gave you freedom. Freedom from constant comparison. Freedom from unnecessary opinions. Freedom from explaining your every move to people who never intended to understand you anyway. When nobody expected anything from you, you had the rare opportunity to experiment, fail, learn, and improve without carrying the weight of public judgment. That is a hidden advantage very few people recognize until it is too late. The world often rewards those who appear successful, long before they become successful. But appearances come with pressure. Once people begin expecting greatness, every mistake becomes entertainment. Every setback becomes gossip, and every delay becomes evidence that you were never capable in the first place. By staying private, you escaped that trap. You allowed yourself to become stronger before stepping into the spotlight. You developed skills instead of excuses. You built confidence instead of collecting compliments. Many people chase validation because they are afraid of being forgotten. They constantly seek reassurance that they matter. But dependence on validation creates invisible chains. The moment your happiness depends on someone else's approval, your peace is no longer yours. Every compliment becomes addictive, and every criticism becomes devastating. Privacy breaks those chains. It teaches you to become your own witness. It forces you to measure yourself against yesterday instead of measuring yourself against strangers. There were moments when it probably felt like nothing was happening. Days blended into weeks. Progress seemed invisible. Results appeared distant. During those moments, it would have been easy to quit because nobody would have noticed either way. But that is exactly where your character was being built. Discipline is not developed when people are cheering. Discipline is revealed when nobody is watching and you continue anyway. That quiet consistency became your greatest weapon. The people around you only saw the surface. They saw your silence and assumed you lacked ambition. They saw your privacy and assumed you lacked confidence. They saw your patience and assumed you lacked ability. They judged the chapter they could see without realizing the most important pages were hidden from them. What they called inactivity was actually preparation. What they called isolation was intentional focus. What they called invisibility was strategic growth. There is incredible strength in becoming comfortable without recognition. Once you no longer need constant attention, your decisions become clearer. You stop asking what will impress people and start asking what will improve your future. That single shift changes everything. Your goals become more authentic because they belong to you instead of belonging to public opinion. Your victories become more meaningful because they represent genuine progress rather than temporary applause. Privacy also protects your energy. Every dream shared with the wrong people invites unnecessary doubt. Every goal announced too early creates pressure before momentum has been built. Not everyone celebrating your ambitions actually wants to see them succeed. Some people secretly hope your plans collapse because your progress reminds them of their own hesitation. By keeping your vision protected, you denied negativity the opportunity to grow stronger than your determination. You gave your dreams room to breathe before exposing them to the opinions of others. Silence has a strange way of making people underestimate you. That underestimation becomes an advantage because expectations remain low while your abilities continue rising. Nobody prepares for the person they believe is standing still. Nobody anticipates the individual who quietly masters their craft while everyone else is distracted by appearances. Then one day the results become impossible to ignore. Suddenly people call it an overnight success, forgetting the countless unseen hours that made that moment inevitable. The most dangerous competitor is rarely the loudest person in the room. It is the quiet individual who keeps improving while everyone else is talking about what they plan to do. Words create excitement, but actions create outcomes. Privacy naturally shifts your focus toward action because there is no audience to entertain. Every day becomes about execution instead of performance. Every decision becomes another brick placed into a foundation that others cannot yet see. Eventually, the very silence people misunderstood becomes the reason they cannot understand your success. They wonder where your confidence came from, where your discipline came from, and why your results seem so solid. They search for shortcuts because they never witnessed the years spent building strength away from public attention. They only notice the finished structure, never the countless invisible bricks laid one at a time in complete silence. There is a reason the loudest moments in life rarely produce the deepest growth. Noise demands attention, but silence demands transformation. Anyone can make announcements about what they are going to become. Anyone can post ambitious plans, seek applause before earning results, and create the illusion of progress through endless conversation. But real growth has never depended on being witnessed. It depends on what you continue doing long after the excitement disappears and no one is left to encourage you. Every meaningful change begins in places where nobody is looking. It begins with choices that seem too small to matter. Waking up when it would be easier to stay in bed. Practicing when no reward is guaranteed. Studying when no test is scheduled. Improving one habit while everyone else remains distracted by temporary pleasures. These quiet decisions rarely receive recognition in the moment, yet they become the invisible force behind every remarkable achievement that people admire later. The world has become obsessed with instant visibility. People often feel pressure to share every milestone before it has time to mature. They mistake exposure for accomplishment, believing that announcing a goal somehow brings them closer to achieving it. But goals grow stronger in silence, like a seed beneath the soil. They require protection before they can withstand the conditions above the surface. Pulling a seed out every day to check its progress only delays its growth. In the same way, constantly seeking approval can interrupt the focus required to create lasting success. When you committed yourself to growing privately, something powerful happened. Your attention shifted away from impressing others and toward improving yourself. Instead of wondering how people would react, you began asking how you could become better than you were yesterday. That change may seem simple, but it separates those who perform from those who truly evolve. Performance is temporary because it depends on an audience. Growth is permanent because it depends on discipline. Many people underestimate how much energy is wasted trying to maintain an image. They carefully manage how they appear, hoping every post, every conversation, and every achievement earns admiration. Meanwhile, genuine progress often requires looking ordinary for a while. It requires accepting that your hard work may go unnoticed. It requires trusting a process that offers no immediate applause. That level of patience is rare because it asks you to believe in results before evidence appears. There were likely moments when your progress felt invisible even to you. You questioned whether your efforts were making a difference. You wondered if anyone would ever recognize the sacrifices you were making. But growth rarely announces itself while it is happening. It accumulates quietly, one decision at a time. Every lesson learned, every failure overcome, every uncomfortable challenge accepted added another layer to the person you were becoming. None of those moments looked extraordinary on their own, but together they created extraordinary change. Silence also teaches resilience. When nobody is watching, excuses lose their value. There is no audience to convince, no reputation to protect, and no external pressure forcing you to continue. The only reason to keep going is because you made a promise to yourself that the fate of unwavering men, thus told as it cannot be borrowed or faked. It becomes part of your identity, rather than something you switch on only when others are paying attention. The most impressive results often surprise people because they never witnessed the preparation. They see confidence, but never saw insecurity being conquered. They see skill, but never saw the countless hours of practice. They see success, but never saw the failures that taught the lessons necessary to reach it. They assume everything happened quickly because they only became aware of the outcome. They overlook the years of quiet consistency that made the outcome possible. There is something almost unsettling about silent growth. It changes you so gradually that others fail to notice until the difference becomes impossible to ignore. One day, the person they underestimated begins speaking with confidence. The individual they overlooked starts achieving remarkable results. The quiet observer becomes the leader everyone wants to follow. Those who once ignored your presence suddenly wonder what changed, unaware that the transformation had been unfolding all along. Your private journey also protected your authenticity. Without constant outside opinions shaping your direction, you had room to discover what genuinely mattered to you. You were not chasing goals because they looked impressive. You were pursuing them because they aligned with the person you wanted to become. That authenticity gives your success a different kind of strength. It cannot be shaken by trends, criticism, or changing public opinion because it was built on personal conviction rather than external approval. People often celebrate dramatic breakthroughs while overlooking the ordinary routines that create them. They admire confidence but ignore the repeated acts of courage that built it. They respect discipline without appreciating the daily choices that strengthened it. They applaud achievement without understanding the quiet persistence behind it. Yet those unnoticed routines are where real transformation lives. They are the reason your success feels stable instead of temporary. Eventually, the results become too significant to remain hidden. Opportunities begin appearing. Respect replaces doubt. The same people who never noticed your efforts suddenly notice your impact. They call your progress remarkable because they only witnessed the final chapter. They never saw the mornings filled with determination, the evenings spent learning, or the countless moments when quitting would have been easier than continuing. Your silent growth became loud results, not because you demanded attention, but because excellence eventually speaks for itself in ways that words never can. One of the greatest illusions people believe is that the world immediately recognizes effort. They assume hard work is instantly rewarded, talent is instantly appreciated, and dedication is instantly respected. But life rarely works that way. More often than not, genuine consistency goes unnoticed for a very long time. While people are searching for quick success stories and dramatic moments, they overlook the quiet individual who keeps showing up every single day. The strange truth is that the world usually notices consistency only after it has already produced undeniable results. Think about how many remarkable people spent years being ignored before anyone celebrated them. Their routines were ordinary. Their progress looked insignificant. Their commitment seemed excessive to those who could only see the surface. People questioned why they continued working so hard without visible rewards. Some even assumed they were wasting their time. What nobody understood was that consistency creates momentum long before it creates recognition. Every day you chose discipline over comfort. You were adding another piece to a future no one else could see. The changes were too small to impress anyone in a single moment. Reading one more chapter did not seem important. Practicing one more hour did not appear life-changing. Improving one habit did not attract applause. Yet these small actions were never meant to amaze people individually. Their power came from repetition. Tiny improvements, repeated over months and years, eventually become impossible to ignore. Most people abandon their goals because they expect encouragement too early. They want immediate proof that their sacrifices are worthwhile. When compliments fail to appear, motivation begins to disappear as well. They mistake silence from the world as evidence that nothing meaningful is happening. In reality, silence often means your foundation is still being built. Foundations are not admired while they are being poured. They are appreciated only after the structure standing above them proves their strength. There is a hidden advantage in being overlooked. When people do not expect much from you, they stop paying close attention. While they are distracted by louder personalities and temporary trends, you gain something priceless: uninterrupted time to improve. You can make mistakes without becoming public entertainment. You can experiment without constant criticism. You can learn without feeling pressured to appear perfect. Those quiet seasons become the training ground that prepares you for opportunities others are not ready to handle. Consistency is not exciting. That is exactly why so few people master it. Motivation feels powerful because it creates emotional highs. Consistency feels ordinary because it asks you to continue even when nothing feels different. It requires you to repeat simple actions despite seeing little immediate reward. That repetition can become frustrating if your focus remains fixed on recognition. But if your focus shifts toward growth itself, every repeated effort becomes meaningful regardless of who notices. There were probably moments when you questioned whether your routine mattered. You wondered if waking up early, learning another skill, or refusing to quit was making any real difference. The progress felt almost invisible because transformation often happens gradually, just as the sunrise changes the sky little by little before daylight fully appears. Personal growth accumulates quietly until one day the difference becomes undeniable. People often admire confidence without realizing confidence is simply accumulated evidence. It comes from keeping promises to yourself repeatedly. Every time you honored your commitments instead of your excuses, you strengthened your belief in your own abilities. That confidence did not appear overnight. It was earned through countless ordinary days that looked unremarkable from the outside, but were shaping your identity from within. The fascinating thing about consistency is that it eventually reaches a tipping point. For months, perhaps even years, your progress appears invisible. Then suddenly everything seems to accelerate. Opportunities arrive unexpectedly. People begin asking for your advice. Doors that once remained closed begin opening with surprising ease. Outsiders call it luck because they only witnessed the breakthrough. They never witnessed the thousands of disciplined decisions that quietly created it. This delayed recognition often confuses people around you. They remember the version of you who was still learning, still struggling, still unnoticed. They fail to understand that while they stayed focused on who you used to be, you continued becoming someone entirely different. Their outdated perception prevents them from recognizing your growth until your achievements become too obvious to dismiss. By then, what seemed like an overnight transformation was actually the result of years of patient consistency. Many people spend their lives chasing moments that make them feel successful, instead of building habits that make success inevitable. Moments create excitement, but habits create identity. One impressive performance may capture attention for a day, A disciplined lifestyle creates results that continue growing long after the applause fades. That is why consistency outlasts talent, motivation, and even favorable circumstances. It keeps moving forward regardless of emotions or external conditions. The world has a habit of celebrating finished masterpieces while forgetting the countless invisible hours that produced them. People applaud excellence because they see the final outcome, not the lonely mornings, difficult decisions, repeated failures, and quiet perseverance hidden beneath it. They admire the visible success while remaining completely unaware of the invisible consistency that made it possible. By the time they finally notice your progress, the real work has already been completed, and what they call sudden success is simply the visible reward of a commitment that never needed their attention to continue growing. There comes a moment in every meaningful transformation when the opinions that once felt heavy begin to lose their power, not because people suddenly become kinder, wiser, or more supportive, but because you become someone who no longer needs their permission to believe in yourself. That shift changes everything. The voices that once made you question your direction become nothing more than distant echoes. They still exist, but they no longer control your decisions. Your transformation has placed you beyond the reach of opinions that once seemed impossible to ignore. In the beginning, criticism often feels personal. Every negative comment lingers longer than it should. Every doubt planted by someone else begins to grow inside your own mind. You wonder if they are right. You question your abilities. You hesitate before taking the next step because you fear confirming everything they already believe about you. This is where many dreams quietly disappear. Not because people lack talent, but because they allow someone else's perception to become their reality. The truth is that opinions are often reflections of the people expressing them, rather than accurate descriptions of the person receiving them. Someone limited by fear assumes your ambition is unrealistic. Someone who avoids discipline calls your consistency unnecessary. Someone uncomfortable with change questions why you refuse to stay the same. Their words reveal their mindset far more than they reveal your potential. Once you understand this, criticism begins to lose its emotional weight. Transformation starts the moment you stop asking whether others believe in your vision and start asking whether your daily actions align with it. Belief alone accomplishes very little without action. Every disciplined choice strengthens your confidence because it provides evidence that you are becoming the person you imagined. Gradually, confidence shifts from something you hope to feel into something you have repeatedly earned. That earned confidence is difficult for outside opinions to shake because it rests on experience rather than imagination. There was a version of you that reacted to every judgment. You wanted people to understand your intentions. You wanted them to recognize your effort. You hoped that if you explained yourself clearly enough, they would finally appreciate your direction. But the more you matured, the more you realized something important. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Some people have already decided how they see you before you ever speak. Trying to change their minds only drains the energy that could have been invested in your growth. Your transformation quietly rewrote your priorities. Instead of focusing on changing opinions, you focused on changing yourself. Instead of defending your dreams, you built them. Instead of arguing with critics, you let your discipline answer every accusation. There is something incredibly powerful about refusing to waste time proving people wrong. Every hour spent arguing delays progress. Every hour spent improving brings you closer to a reality that no argument could ever create. As your mindset changed, your relationship with failure changed as well. You stopped seeing mistakes as proof that critics were right. Instead, you viewed them as necessary lessons. Every setback became information rather than humiliation. Every obstacle became another opportunity to develop patience, resilience, and wisdom. This perspective made you emotionally stronger because your identity was no longer tied to appearing perfect. It became tied to continuing despite imperfection. People often expect transformation to be dramatic, but the most profound changes happen quietly. They happen when you stop seeking approval before making decisions. They happen when compliments become appreciated but unnecessary. They happen when criticism no longer interrupts your momentum. You wake up one day and realize you have been moving forward without checking who is watching. That realization is freedom. It means your direction is guided by purpose rather than public opinion. Ironically, the moment you stop trying to impress everyone is often the moment people become impressed. They notice a confidence that cannot be manufactured. They sense a calmness that does not depend on circumstances. They recognize a level of focus that remains steady regardless of praise or criticism. What they are witnessing is not arrogance. It is the quiet strength that develops when someone has spent enough time becoming comfortable with their own convictions. Those who once underestimated you may eventually change their opinions, but by then their approval carries far less significance than it once did. You are no longer chasing acceptance because your sense of worth has become internal rather than external. Success feels different when it is built on self-respect instead of validation. It becomes more stable because it is no longer vulnerable to changing moods, trends, or popular opinion. There will always be people who misunderstand your choices because they only judge what they can see. They cannot measure the battles you fought in private, the discipline you practiced when nobody was watching, or the sacrifices that shaped your character. Their perspective is limited to visible outcomes, while your transformation was built through invisible decisions repeated over time. That is why their opinions eventually become irrelevant. They were evaluating an old version of you, while you were quietly becoming someone entirely different. By the time they finally recognize the change, you have already outgrown the need for their recognition, because the person you became is no longer defined by what others think, but by the standards you chose to live by every single day. There is a remarkable difference between demanding attention and naturally attracting it. One is driven by desperation, while the other is created through substance. Many people spend years trying to convince the world that they are important. They carefully construct an image, constantly seek validation, and measure their worth by how many people notice them. Yet attention earned this way is fragile. It disappears as quickly as it arrives because it depends on continuous performance. Genuine success follows a different path. It grows quietly until its presence becomes impossible to ignore. When you focused on becoming better instead of becoming famous, you made a decision that most people never understand. You stopped chasing temporary recognition and started building permanent value. Every skill you developed, every obstacle you overcame, and every disciplined habit you strengthened added something real to your character. These were not things that could be taken away by changing opinions or shifting trends. They became part of who you were. The interesting thing about authentic success is that it never needs to introduce itself. People recognize excellence even when it remains silent. They notice confidence that does not seek approval. They respect discipline that continues without applause. They admire consistency because it is rare in a world where many people lose focus after the first obstacle. Your actions begin speaking so clearly that explanations become unnecessary. Think about how often people become fascinated by someone they once ignored. At first, they overlooked your efforts because there was nothing dramatic to capture their attention. Your work happened behind closed doors. Your progress unfolded one day at a time. There were no flashy announcements or constant reminders asking people to notice you. Then something changed. The results became visible. Suddenly, the same individuals who barely acknowledged your presence became curious about your journey. They wanted to know your secret, as though success had appeared from nowhere. What they failed to understand was that success had been quietly growing for a long time. Every unseen sacrifice eventually created a visible reward. Every lonely decision to keep improving while others relaxed became another step toward a future that only you believed in. The spotlight did not create your success. Your success created the spotlight. That distinction matters because it reminds you where your focus should always remain. Many people become distracted the moment attention begins arriving. They spend more energy protecting their reputation than improving their abilities. They become afraid of making mistakes because they worry about disappointing the people who are now watching. This is where growth often slows down. They begin performing for the audience instead of continuing the process that earned the audience in the first place. Your greatest strength is remembering that attention is a consequence, not a destination. The habits that built your success should remain more important than the recognition your success receives. If you continue valuing discipline over popularity, your growth will not stop simply because more eyes are watching. You will remain grounded in the same principles that carried you through the seasons when nobody cared about your progress. There is also something powerful about unexpected success. When people have low expectations of you, they become unprepared for your rise. They build assumptions based on outdated versions of your life, believing you have remained exactly the same. While they are busy repeating old opinions, you continue evolving. By the time they realize how much you have changed, the gap between their expectations and your reality has become enormous. That surprise makes your achievements seem even more extraordinary. Not everyone will celebrate your progress. Some people will suddenly pay attention for reasons that have nothing to do with admiration. Curiosity, comparison, jealousy, and regret often appear when someone unexpectedly succeeds. Individuals who once ignored your potential may now wonder why they failed to recognize it. Others may attempt to minimize your accomplishments because accepting your growth forces them to confront their own lack of action. Their reactions say more about their internal struggles than they do about your achievements. This is why humility remains so important. Attention can become another distraction if you allow it to define your identity. Stay connected to the version of yourself who kept working without applause. Remember the mornings when nobody encouraged you. Remember the evenings when quitting felt easier than continuing. Those memories protect you from becoming dependent on recognition because they remind you that your greatest progress happened long before anyone applauded it. Real influence does not come from being the loudest voice in the room. It comes from becoming someone whose life reflects consistency, integrity, and quiet confidence. People trust actions more than promises. They are inspired by visible discipline more than impressive speeches. When your life consistently reflects the values you claim to believe in, your presence begins motivating others without needing constant explanation. Eventually, opportunities begin finding you instead of you chasing every opportunity. Respect arrives without being demanded. Doors open because your reputation has been built through reliability rather than self-promotion. Conversations change because people are interested in learning from someone whose success appears authentic rather than manufactured. The attention surrounding you is no longer the result of trying to be noticed. It exists because years of patient growth created something too meaningful to remain hidden, proving that the strongest form of recognition is the kind that arrives naturally after you have spent enough time becoming the person you were always capable of being. One of the greatest mistakes people make after achieving recognition is believing they have finally arrived. They assume the attention they receive today is the destination they spent years pursuing. They relax, become comfortable, and slowly abandon the habits that carried them through seasons of struggle. But growth has never been about reaching a finish line. Every achievement is simply another beginning. Every victory opens the door to greater responsibility, deeper challenges, and higher expectations. That is why protecting your peace matters more now than ever before. Because your greatest chapter has not happened yet. The world has finally started to notice you, but that attention comes with a hidden test. Suddenly, more people have opinions about your choices. More distractions appear. More opportunities compete for your time. More voices try to influence your direction. If you are not careful, the very recognition you worked so hard to earn can become the thing that pulls you away from the purpose that created it. Success attracts noise, and noise has a way of making people forget the quiet habits that made them successful. Your peace is no longer just a feeling. It has become a strategy. It protects your ability to think clearly when everyone expects quick decisions. It protects your focus when countless distractions promise instant rewards. It protects your confidence when criticism becomes louder, simply because more people are paying attention. Peace is not weakness, it is the discipline of refusing to allow outside chaos to become your inner reality. Think back to the period when nobody knew your name. Your routine was simple. You worked, learned, improved, and repeated the process. You were not trying to impress anyone. You were simply becoming better. That simplicity gave you strength. Now that attention has arrived, it becomes even more important to preserve that same mindset. Never allow recognition to replace discipline. Never let popularity become more important than progress. Many people lose themselves after becoming visible because they start living according to expectations instead of convictions. They become afraid to disappoint people. They begin making choices based on applause rather than purpose. Slowly, they stop asking what is right for their future and start asking what will keep everyone else happy. This is a dangerous trade because pleasing everyone is impossible. The more you chase universal approval, the further you move away from the authentic person you worked so hard to become. Protecting your peace also means choosing your environment carefully. Not everyone who suddenly enters your life deserves permanent access to it. Some people are drawn to your success rather than your character. Others admire your results without respecting the journey that produced them. Learn the difference. Genuine relationships encourage your continued growth. Temporary relationships only celebrate what they can gain from your achievements. Wisdom comes from recognizing which voices deserve your attention and which ones should remain background noise. Your greatest chapter will require a different version of you than the one that brought you here. Growth never asks you to remain the same. The discipline that helped you survive difficult seasons must now evolve into leadership. The patience that carried you through loneliness must become wisdom capable of guiding others. The resilience developed through struggle must transform into stability that remains strong regardless of changing circumstances. Every new level demands a deeper level of character. There will still be moments of uncertainty. Recognition does not eliminate challenges, it simply changes their shape. Instead of wondering whether anyone believes in you, you may begin wondering whether you can handle greater responsibility. Instead of fighting to be noticed, you may struggle to protect your time from endless demands. These are different battles, but they require the same mindset that helped you overcome previous obstacles: calm thinking, steady discipline, and unwavering purpose. Never confuse visibility with fulfillment. Many people become famous without finding peace. Others become successful without discovering meaning. External achievements are valuable, but they cannot replace internal stability. If your identity depends entirely on success, then every setback becomes an identity crisis. But when your identity is rooted in your values, temporary failures lose the power to define you. You remain steady because your foundation was built long before recognition arrived. Remember that the qualities which made you uncommon are still your greatest advantage. Humility keeps you learning even when others praise you. Gratitude keeps you grounded when opportunities multiply. Discipline keeps you improving after others assume you have reached your limit. Patience keeps you focused on long-term purpose instead of short-term excitement. These qualities will continue opening doors that talent alone cannot unlock. There is an entire future waiting beyond the success people currently admire. New dreams are waiting to be built. New lessons are waiting to be learned. New obstacles are waiting to shape an even stronger version of your character. Never allow today's recognition to become tomorrow's limitation. Continue protecting the quiet space where your vision grows, where your discipline remains stronger than distraction, and where your purpose stays louder than public opinion. The world may finally be noticing you, but your story is far from complete, because the person you are becoming tomorrow has the potential to accomplish things that the version of you standing here today cannot even fully imagine.